Well, good luck with the rest of I don't know. I'm going to cut that out. I'm trying to find a good, goodbye tag and I never can. So I'm just like, good luck with your life.
A galactic herd of KKs
invites you to Space Cat's Happy Hour.
Let your mind relax. We meet in a dimension outside of time,
where the playfully curious thrive.
So go on, fill your tin cup chalice with the sacred elixir of creativity. Laugh till you breathe violet flame at the theme's absurdity. And above all, let out your full-throated song with us.
Here at Space Cat's Happy Hour, with the galactic fur of KKs.
Hello, and welcome to Space Cat's Happy Hour, where American KK can finally hit the record button and actually record this goddamn podcast. We have not been able to do that for the past 3 times that I've tried to record, so now it is working, and there's no excuse because Mercury is no longer in any kind of retrograde or shadow.
It was the Zoom meeting without a host.
So weird.
And when there was only one set of Zoom background filters, that's when
I didn't have any options.
Jesus was hosting Zoom.
Jesus was hosting Zoom.
Yeah, because he didn't have background filters. That was an important setup for the joke.
That has to be a title of another song that we write together because that's fucking hilarious. Okay. Oh man, we're gonna figure out how I'm American KK and I love my little Canadian KK co-host in her lovely little flowers.
Also known as Zadikat and also known as K. I'm trying to consolidate because somebody kindly let me know through the Facebook, found my Zadikat thing, but they also knew me from the Facebook group where I go by my other name, which isn't even my real name. And they were like, okay, great. So that's you. It was a bit hard to know who, and I was like, I know I've got 8 million identities, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's creating labyrinths for people to try to connect the dots of who the podcast is connected to the healing portal is connected to me and the Dragon Tree Collective. Oh my God, we started a collective.
Wow. Yeah. Some things have happened since we recorded last. I guess we should maybe go into that. Yeah. A Dragon Tree Collective on Patreon with AOE and K and me, American KK. And we're going to be doing some fun shit, energy readings and Akashic record stuff, maybe book clubs where you're encouraged not to read the book. And I just summarize the good bullet points for you. Or I don't know. We're just figuring it out as we go.
Cacao ceremonies, new moon ceremonies, yin yoga,
chakra balancing,
group healings, crafternoons, possibly.
Crafternoons with K. I am signing up for that ASAP. That sounds good. Yeah. So we'll have links to that in the show notes, but that's us. Yeah. We're all consolidating our identities. I had a reading with Serafina earlier and she was like, what do you want me to call you? Catherine KK Space Cat? I was like, whatever. Anything is fine.
I know when AOE in our group text, when AOE referred to you as Catherine, I was like, what?
I know.
I was I just do not think of you as Catherine. You are KK to me.
I know. And the thing is, they all the names resonate differently when people say them. So when some people call me KK, I'm like, ooh, I would rather, and it's, I'll accept it. It's fine. But sometimes your name just needs to change depending on who's fucking saying it. At least at this point, that's how I feel. So
yes, I'm trying to, I haven't gotten it. I keep putting it off. And it's not like I anticipate any resistance or friction, but telling my friends who aren't online and don't follow this stuff that I more go by K now, switching away from Kathleen to K. Kathleen really feels less and less for me personally, like me. But yeah, I just keep postponing. Like I would literally just have to send a text being like, I'm going more by K now. And they'd be like, cool.
Yeah. It feels big to us when you're doing something that feels ginormous, because the name is very important. You know, some people say, and I used to be one of them, I was like, it's just a fucking name, who cares? And I'm no longer like that. I know that names have power. And so when you're dealing with changing your name or going by something else or whatever it is that your journey is, it feels huge, and you forget that other people are just going to be like, okay, whatever. Because yeah, I hear you. I have that same resistance.
Also, to go back to the Dragon Tree Collective, I'm very excited about it. It is a big deal. I don't want to like brush past it.
Yeah.
we officially just launched announcing that we exist on the February 22 millions of twos portals. I'm really happy to have found you and AOE and found people. I love small group collaborations and simultaneously have so much work and like collaborative project baggage that I'm bringing in from my old lives that is like constantly dissolving. Every time we have a meeting, it's just so amazing to work with people who aren't projecting stuff onto you. And then you can just really be like, and are on the same wavelength about like, we don't want this to become onerous. We want to be in flow. We don't want people to have to do things that they don't want to do. It's just like, it feels like a miracle. Literally, it feels like living in that utopic future. And I just find it so lovely. It's funny because like I didn't anticipate to be the one bringing so many freakouts to the table. Like I would have like these huge reactions to things or like panics about stuff related to like work dynamics or workflow or whatever, and just having that come up, and then like it's like, oh, that's okay, you're having that emotion, that's fine. And just like, oh my God, I have so much staff meeting baggage from the nonprofit and like collective world. Is just like,
it's a lot. Yeah, for sure. I hear you. And it is really helpful to have all of us just be aware, like consciously creating and consciously being interdependent instead of codependent and hiding our true feelings just to get along or whatever. It's like, no, say the truth, no matter how much it feels hard, because we have space for that. And you're really good at being the first to have those freakouts or bring up those really tough conversations. And I'm like, wow, it opens the door for me, because I love holding space for that shit, because I can feel it and help dissolve it if that's what the other person wants. But I'm not used to actually being the one that brings my true feelings a lot of times, where I'm like, no, it's totally cool. I can get along. I know that I'm not going to get away with that right now. Like that's not how we need to operate going forward. And you are opening the door by showing me that it's safe to do that. Cause like, of course you would do the same for me as I'm doing for you. And I know that, and I trust that. And I'm not used to trusting that. And it's really cool, but it's really weird because it's just, you're right. It's like that future utopia stuff where people are actually communicating and having healthy boundaries and just being awesome and freaking out if you need to freak out, and just being a full human along with our crazy alien shit that we're bringing to the table. So it's a really cool thing. I am very appreciative and excited.
I was telling my friend about it because it was making me so happy. And I was saying, like, I'm such a repressed Sagittarius. Like Sagittarius are supposed to be so blunt, and I'm always censoring myself, always, except for when my ADD overrides and something impulsive comes out of my mouth, and then I just endlessly go into agonies of like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. But that's like the lovely life of the merry Sagittarius, is just to like blithely be like, no, I don't like that or whatever. And I was like, I feel like that part of me is finally starting to come out, and it just feels so empowering. Like if I could actually tap into that more.
Good. It sounds like you're Capricorn rising, very boundaried, very Saturnian, and that's the balance towards your carefree.
That guy, shake my fist.
Yeah, this is awesome. Let it all out. I'm excited. It does feel very freeing to be able to work like this, or to play like this, I should say, because this feels much more like play.
And the way we've just talked, because I also, just to put it out all on the table, I started having issues with the idea of Patreon, because like I've seen other people go through stuff with their Patreons, and like it felt, even though I was initially the one who was like, Patreon, it must be a Patreon. I was like, it just feels like very constricting. So we were just talking about ways of making it more fun. And it's good to remember that you can create something that you want to do that does serve others, that is also fun. And like, you don't have to play by the rules of these things. So in that sense, I'm also really excited because I think it's going to be what we do with the collective is just going to be always evolving and changing. And like, I think that's also going to be fun for the people that we end up being with because it'll be stimulating.
Yeah. Just always different. We're going to go with the flow and just offer what feels good. And it's all going to be good because we're badasses. So you should join. And it's fun. We're also going to have a community hangout set. I don't know what the fuck to call them, just other than a hangout session, but just once a month, just get on Zoom and talk about shit. Like if you're going through something and you're like, what is up with this? And maybe other people are going through it too. And we can talk about how the energies are, or, whatever it is, we're just going to let it flow and just be there for.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a really cool space, and I'm excited. I've been internally preparing myself because I'm getting ready to do the first oracle card reading. I've been doing these homemade oracle cards that I make, and I've been putting them online, but like mostly like 1 or 2 cards max. But this I want to do like get really detailed into the spread, and that's exciting to me because I really like making those. So I think I'm going to be putting one of those out next week. So I was getting excited.
Awesome. I love those homemade oracle cards.
Cut up like beautiful art, photos of art, or like children's book illustrations, and find text to go with them. It's very, very inner child fun process.
That's the way to do it right now. We are moving into that energy of just operating with childlike play and wonder and fucking fun.
So that's really exciting. Collectively, the world's in an interesting place right now.
Yeah. How about
we're recording this very early March. It's March 4th. So last night was particularly spicy, I'll say.
Yeah, it's, if anyone else has felt like they're going through it, you're definitely not alone. I was actually weirdly calm and steady on the inside for most of the week.
Yeah, I want to totally get into this because I think it's very interesting what different roles people are playing, especially people who are like on a spiritual path and stuff. And like, so yeah, you were having a calm week. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. So yeah, I was really calm. I felt like I had a very calm center, and then like maybe the outsides of me kind of on the periphery were like sort of ghost programming anxieties and old stories trying to come in, but like that calm center wouldn't let it. But I wasn't used to feeling that calm center before. So I was like, should I be letting the anxiety in? I don't fucking know where that came from, but that was my brain going wacko because I'm just not used to being that calm, because the last year and a half have just been constant. Ugh. And so I'm not used to not feeling that. And so when I wasn't, and it was trying to get in from the outside, I was like, well, maybe I should just let it back in because that's comfortable, for fuck's sake. Anyway, so I was fine for most of that. And I was able to kind of stay in that calmness. But yesterday, was it? Yeah, it was yesterday. I just felt kind of some of the earlier stuff I'd been through earlier this year, where it's just like digestion issues and like stomach cramping and kind of feeling like you're drinking on an empty stomach and you just fucking, you can't. And so I knew I was processing something, and I wasn't feeling super anxious, but I definitely had I had trigger moments of being like, things would piss me off. Like at work, I was just like, why am I mad at this? This is not a big deal, And so I definitely had a bit more of an eventful day yesterday, and I was real glad when it was over because it was a triggering day. But at the same time, I still felt really like I was standing upright and it wasn't difficult to stand upright in the midst of some really crazy swirling shit around me. Like if you're in an ocean and the waves are trying to take you down, I felt like the waves were like barely hitting me. I was that steady, but I was still like pissed off and triggered. I don't know. It was kind of a weird combination of like okay and not okay. But I knew from whatever I was going through yesterday, I was like, well, this is a good sign of leveling up, like this. I know that whatever I was going through yesterday would have knocked me out completely, and I would have been on the floor like earlier this past year or whatever. So I know that there's been progress being made, and I think I'm also on a time, whatever my spot is in this point in time, I kind of feel like I'm holding like a blanket of calm, for lack of a better word. That's not really what I'm going for, but it's like a blanket of like steadiness, so that other people can be protected while they collapse timelines or transmute stuff or like close out old stories or end their karmic cycles of some sort. And so I'm sort of holding a blanket of comfort. It probably doesn't feel like it to most people, because they're not, they're not gonna be like, oh, I feel so comfortable in my misery right now. But I when I see it in my head, that's what I feel. And I know that nothing is better or worse than anyone else's. Like, I've been in the whole collapsing timeline stuff and being miserable while other people have held that blanket of comfort. So we just kind of trade places on and off. And I guess this time is for me to be a little bit more removed, quote unquote, just by like holding the frequency of like, you're going to be okay. I got you, even if you have no idea what I'm actually doing because you don't know me. Any of that makes sense? Because that's kind of where I've been trying to sort out with that.
You've got a little kitty climbing who got very excited at the last part of what you were saying. Well, for me, as listening, it really makes sense that because me and AOE have done a lot of talking about what we're bringing to this collective as well, because we kind of occupy different places on the spectrum. And you being this underworld guide, it doesn't surprise me that you, out of the three of us, would have had the calmest and steadiest week when on the global level there was so charged, and it was like the energy of like destruction and chaos and conflict.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you for saying that.
I also want to come back afterwards to something that you said about the waters, because that's relevant. But my experience of this week, so I've completely tuned out the news pretty much. And if information needs to come to me, it'll come to me. Like someone will bring up a news story or whatever. Obviously this, what's going on with Ukraine is like pretty inescapable. But even at that, I wasn't following the details, the day-to-day details, but things that were coming in, and they were coming in directly to me in a way that I was like, okay, so this is one of those times where I am supposed to like point my attention towards something, I'm not, because I find for me, with my own personal relationship to reality, it can be very helpful to have the minimal understanding of what's happening in any given reality, because then if you do a big collective jump, it's easier to take in internally, and like you have less resistance to it. Whereas if you're following minute to minute what's happening, you are really end up like holding down to that reality really firmly. So that's my own personal approach that works well for me in general. So that's why I sometimes find it's like better to know less. But I was really feeling like, no, this is coming to me. And it was interesting because I've spent the past 2 weeks traveling. So I was in gorgeous Costa Rica, just like visiting all these forests surrounded by beautiful nature, seeing all these amazing birds and wildlife. It was incredible when the news broke. And I felt it like I felt that push on the back feeling where it was like, okay, you got to take some action here, which kind of startled me because I was like, I'm on vacation. Can't this wait like a few more days? And it was like, no. And I was very tired by that point too, because even though it was a wonderful, miraculous, beautiful vacation, I had a lot of fear triggers to overcome with the travel. And I was doing a lot of things that I was pushing myself in a lot of ways, especially with the final part of the trip where I was just on my own. And it involved a lot of logistics and a lot of day-to-day travel. So I was very, very, by that point, I was like exhausted. I was like, really? But it came in really powerfully. And in the end, Yumi and AOE have sent energy to locations before during times of conflict. And I've done stuff on my own. My feeling in general about people who are like very much in the process of like super remembering who we are and where we come from, and is that personally, I feel like it's really important not to get sucked into the idea that we're here to save other people or like be some kind of like hero or savior or whatever. And it's a very kind of like a tightrope walk to really expand into your own powers and abilities of how you relate to and affect your reality, while also just maintaining that sense of every single other being's godness as well, and being like,
Yeah.
so whenever whenever I'm like, okay, I want to send like direct energy to something, for me, this is what guides me, is I'm like, okay, well, I am always wanting to move more and more towards deeper and deeper into a reality that feels fun and pleasant to me. For me, that's a reality that's much more peaceful, peaceful, abundant, kind, generous, compassionate, playful. So I feel comfortable like taking actions to do that. And then now I just lost track in the middle of what I was going to say.
Well, actually, you were making me think of how I have really started to anchor in the knowing, I guess, and in a way that like feels like I finally learned the lesson, where other people are responsible for their own energy, their own experience, everything. Yeah. And I need to give them the respect that they and trust that they can take care of their own fucking experience, which I have not been doing historically in my life, toxic empathy and blah, blah, blah. So I finally, literally just this past month, I feel like have I gotten to the point of like, oh, it makes sense to me now in a way that I can kind of disentangle some of that codependency and toxic empathy. And I can just like trust that they have their own experience. And so when I see my energy work, I have a couple different visions, but like when I see myself giving energetic help, at least right now, I see it as there's like this dark, stormy sky, and there's like not clouds, but there's like bundles of white light that have streams coming down from them. And the streams of light have like dust on them, like debris or darkness or whatever it is. And so what I do is I send like a burst of energy, like a sonic boom. I don't really know what it is, but that's how I'm describing it right now, because those are the only words I have. And I like see the dust and debris fly off of those strands of light, so that I've helped, quote unquote, I don't know, I've helped by like brushing off the gross, clogged whatever was there that is appropriate for me to clear off, so that it clears them up and like gives those channels of light, which I guess are souls or something. I don't really know what they are in my brain, but that's just what they look like in my head. So it clears them of the debris and the darkness and the stuff that is something that I can clear for them, so that they have a breath of fresh air to continue with their own experience, no matter how difficult that might be, or whatever I judge it to be. It's not my place to judge it. But so that's what I have been seeing as my energy work, as far as like not interfering, but not being not helpful, at least to me, how it feels.
That's so interesting. I love that. I find for me, it changes from each time to each time when it comes to like regional stuff. But one of the things, I had an energy healer teacher, Cindy Dale, that I took some online courses with that I really liked. And she has a technique that's spirit to spirit that I just immediately adopted, which is you affirm your spirit, and then you affirm the other person's spirit and the spirit of all their guides and stuff and the ancestors. And you can even extend it, the land, whatever. And so that way, anything you do is only with the permission of their spirit. So you're already just building in, I don't want to do any karmic interference. I am not here to like impose my idea of what should happen. And I find that, I think you, like other people, just have other ways of like doing that exact same thing. But for me, that's just the technique that I always use. And I think also, I just think there's so many interesting dimensions to this, because I think people can tend to feel really powerless in the face of these big world events. And actually, it's incredible how much power we hold internally. So oftentimes just work to bring more inner harmony and integrate more polarized stuff within yourself is going to just be all that needs to be done. But in this case, I very much felt my higher self or my guides very much pushing me. It was like, no, you need to take some external action. And it was interesting because in the past, when I've done any kind of like energy work, sending to regions in conflict or whatever, it's been very connected to the land. And again, with the spirit to spirit, I just it's mostly like I watch stuff unfold. Like I watch like different energies come in and do their thing. And I'm just kind of like looking in and being like, oh, this is fascinating. But I see a lot of spirits connected to the land and natural entities and all sorts of stuff that I'll see. And this time it was completely different. It was like, it was the same as when I'm in session with a person one-on-one or in a group session doing like an energy healing. where I was feeling it in my body, and I wasn't
Yikes.
prepared for that. And as I said, I was very tired. So I wasn't as like, my boundaries weren't as strong as they could have or should have been. And so it was very like, whoa, the conflict had only just started to like really be getting to that like boiling point in the news and stuff. And so I think obviously like people were just in their initial reactions, and it was just very like, I was hearing their thought. When I'm doing a healing, I'll often feel overpowering self-doubt or fear or whatever that is like, and I have to be like, oh,
Not mine.
I'm feeling what that person's feeling. This isn't mine. But when it's like, hundreds of thousands of people, it was like, whoa, it was very, I was just caught really unawares, and I was having these thoughts in my head about Putin that were so intense. And I was like, took me a while to be like, wait, those aren't my thoughts. Anyway, but it was just very interesting. And I just did whatever I was guided to do, which I think honestly feels kind of similar to what you were saying. It's just like everybody over there is doing such amazingly courageous work. And you're kind of like the person with the cup of water at a marathon, It's like you're just like handing them a cup of water as they run by. It's like, here's some water. Yeah. You're running and stuff. But yeah, it's the first time that it's ever played out that way. And I'm still kind of unpacking it in my head. And it took, I think, again, I didn't follow all my usual protocols either, because I wasn't expecting it to play out that way. So I think I was like carrying around a lot of stuff afterwards that I imagine should have cleared out much more quickly and effectively.
No wonder you had such a crazy week. Jesus.
So then this week, oh my God, I came back the day after I came back, the morning I woke up to a really big tax snafu thing, letter from the government. Like, it's a mistake, but it's like one of those really stressful things where it's like, I'm going to owe how much, but it was just like, while I was traveling, I'd had this realization. I was like, I think I had my passport, but I was like, I think I may have lost my health card and my driver's license. And I was like, it's okay. And I was being really chill. I was like, it's okay. It's like, normally this would stress me out, but I am cool as a cucumber. I was like, it might still be at home. It was a timeline hopping thing for sure, because I had this whole timeline around it anyway. But then I got home and I was no longer on the timeline where I'd cleverly left them on the desk. So I was like, it's okay. I thought I was so chill. And then I woke up to that letter from the government, had a little fit, calmed myself down, was feeling great. Man. This was like mid-morning of the first morning back after like a lot of travel too, just exhausted, feeling finally like trying to start rebalancing my nervous system from the tax thing and the ID thing. And the Steak fucking fell off this landing that she always jumps on. We have like this rim around our staircase up into our apartment, and she fell. She's always falling. Oh, very scary. But this time she fell, and I could tell she really hurt herself. And she went, and then I picked her up, and then she was dragging both of her hind feet behind her, and I had to like race. Like within 20 minutes, we were at the vet, and the vet was like checking if she was paralyzed or not. It was so fucking
holy shit, man.
and I was just like, anyway,
it's cool. I'm chill.
That one I was like,
not so much.
And then I was like, had my cry about how upsetting it was to see her dragging her poor little hind legs behind her. Anyway, now she's fine. She's recovering. It was just, we're on the timeline where it was just a very bad soft tissue bruise. So then I was like, the next day I just basically recovered from that day, and I had no energy at all.
Yeah.
And then yesterday I was like, okay, back on track, feeling great. Suddenly out of nowhere, my face is all inflamed and like puffy and red, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then Mike finally, and when he got home in the evening, he was like, I think you're having like a rosacea. And then that was a huge trigger for me, because I started to get rosacea during my dark night of the soul. And then I was told by the dermatologist I'd have to be on this like skincare medication forever. That was blah, blah, blah. And it was like constant flushing. It was really, it was very, really changed my appearance. I had a really hard time with it. It took forever to like get off that timeline. And I thought I had totally conquered it for good. And this time it was even worse. Like, it was like worse than it had ever looked. It was so, but I had such a meltdown and such a freak out. And this was last night. Meanwhile, not knowing about what was going on in the news. Meanwhile, Mike is like very aware because he follows the news like a little hawk, but he doesn't tell me anything. So it's like during the exact period where the nuclear plant was on fire, I am like,
You're in
my
flames.
face is on fire. I'm freaking out about it. I'm having such a huge freak.
Wow.
And I was like, why am I? It's like, this reaction is disproportionate to what it's. And sorry if this sounds incredibly self-involved. I'm really just using it as an illustration of like how the internal and the external merge. I don't at all. It's like all of my compassion goes to everybody who had to live through that, and I'm not at all trying to compare. It was just like, and then like finally, I just like got myself to a place where I was like, fine, I'm just gonna go to bed and it'll be okay, whatever. And then Mike's like, by the way, he's like, I see him go to the computer and he's like, oh God, thank God. And I was like, what? And he's like, well, and then it turned out it like wasn't even quite over yet. I thought it was over and it wasn't over. And then I had a dream I had a dream that was like very trippy in the middle of the night about it.
Want to save that, or you want to go into it?
The dream was like one of those astral dreams, and there was this device. It was like a brush, and you put it on your face, and then you could bring in this stream from a parallel or different dimension, and I could see it. I could see what that would look like very clearly, this like big energetic stream. It kind of looked pixelated in grays and blacks and whites, very bright, coming in, thick, very solid stream. And I was like, let me do it. I know I can do this. And then they put it on my face. I don't know what this is. And like, instead of the bristles feeling all pokey, they were like, they were just soft. And then I saw it, and like it was like shooting out of my face. And then I was like trying to like control it and like moving around. And then it was just showing me in this part, I remember almost nothing, but it was just showing me all this stuff that was like transferring or something. And there were like symbols and words and images. And one of the words I remember was Europe. And I was like, oh. And then I had this feeling that was kind of like a nostalgia. There was like some sadness, but there was also curiosity. I was like, I wonder what that means, the word like Europe, that this is like. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. What a trippy fucking dream. Holy shit. That's cool. But also that's a lot to unpack.
It was. Yeah. There was Costa Rica, the traveling brought back my vivid dreams again, which I'm grateful for, but like, yeah, it's been really intense. Yeah, that one was really.
I cannot wait to find out more, because I know there's gonna be more about that also, device.
When I was doing the thing with the Ukraine, I asked how long the timeline was, and I heard 6 to 8 months. And so, right, this is what I wanted to bring back to was, I don't know if we ever talked about this on air, but the water scrying. There was a period, but I still do it, where I would go to the river and get messages from the water. And I was doing a lot of it in December of 2021. There was a lot of stuff where like there was like ambulances like stopping dead, the siren. I would hear the siren and suddenly it stopped dead in the middle of the thing. That's what gave me, I was like, okay, we're going to jump off the timeline of the pandemic, or at least shift our relationship to it. And then there was immediately another type of siren, which was the police siren, when it's like clearing the way for all of the emergency vehicles. So I was like, okay, something else is coming. It's going to like distract. Could be a lot of things. There was a lot of like jumping back and forth, fast timelines, but it felt like February to me. I remember at the time, I was like, that feels really early in the year, but that is what it feels like. Yeah, that's going to happen.
I also had a dream last night about masks. Well, it was a very small portion of the dream, but I was wearing a mask in a mall, and I was wearing it because my mom was there, and she's not immunocompromised, but she's older, and I just wanted to wear the mask, and she wasn't wearing one, and she wasn't worried about it. And then I looked around and no one else was wearing them either. So I was like, oh, I guess we're not doing this anymore. And that was like, I wonder if that's what's actually, I feel like that's kind of also happening in real life in certain places. And I think it feels like it's going to be spreading, partly because we have another fucking distraction that is.
Yeah. And okay, again, I'm looking at this from a place, I have total compassion, and I'm not ignoring the experiences of how it feels for people going through this. But I think that it's going to take a lot for us to take our minds off the pandemic, right? Like before I left, I was on this fucking timeline with Mystique and her illness that spiraled so much and then was so hard to get off of. And we kept looping and another round of antibiotics and the constipation. It was just like, and I could feel, I was like, I know this is teaching me something very important. And then and there were a million lessons. One day I'm going to just do an episode just about that because there were so many lessons. Anyway, it was like 8 weeks. I forget how long in the end it was, of something that should have been resolved very quickly and just kept dragging on. And it was very painful to like watch your little cute baby endure. But when I was coming off of it that day, first of all, the immense amount of inner work I had to do just to finally get to that day where the doctor called me and said, her urine test is clear. It's cleared. We cleared the goddamn infection, which was like a few days before I left for my trip. Immediately, she started pawing at her eye, and her eye was all goopy, and she wouldn't stop pawing at it, pawing at it, and pawing at it. And she was doing something that her mom used to do where it was like she developed this allergy and she would just scritch and scritch and scritch, and we had to put her. So immediately the internal, the nervous system wants to bring in something else. When you're pulling yourself off of something, and it's that you're clearing all these deep fears of like suffering and what it's like to experience suffering and pain and death and change and loss. As you know, you clear it, and then it manifests in a different way. So that happened as soon as I was like, no, we're not doing this. We're not jumping on this timeline. So immediately that went away. I went to sleep, woke up, nothing's happening in the eye, but suddenly her other side of her face is completely drooping. She doesn't look like herself at all.
Oh my God.
I was like, has she had a stroke? Right? Like it was just like right up until I left. It was, and then of course, when I came back, immediately she falls. So I think
this is rough.
For me, I feel like we have to be very compassionate with what we manifest collectively in the coming years, because we are getting off of this. We're collectively getting our nervous systems off of this endless cycle of trigger, conflict, so that we can like learn something new that it's not part of like our understanding of human history, a really peaceful, less high contrast experience. We all have to like retrain ourselves to enjoy that and feel fulfilled and be able to tolerate it, and also allow our poor traumatized nervous systems to like work out all those tweaks. So it doesn't surprise me that there's such a big
distraction
thing happening. And I think it's not just a distraction. I think it's also about like offering people the opportunity to step out of conflict-oriented perspective on life and completely let go of the other and the villain. Because there's a really strong desire right now to turn a certain world leader into the ultimate villain of everything. And that he just represents the destructive, separate, the part of ourselves that feels very separate and that is really destructive. That's like just another part of the universe and the human experience.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it that way, because distraction wasn't ringing true in my head, but that's all I had. And that's exactly what I was thinking of it as another big pile of, do you want more of the same, or do you want to jump off a different jump to that, not jump, but like move towards that new age where we all are integrated and we're not doing this otherness bullshit. And it's not that I am judging anyone for picking up whatever piece of that they want to, because it's everyone's game. They can play it the way they want. But I'm like, this feels very much like a universe giving us a thing, like integrate it or keep playing out the conflict polarized. This year feels very much to me like that. The timeline splits, like at any moment you can be on, whichever, I don't know, timeline or dimension or whatever it is. And it's not a bypassing thing. It's like an opt-in thing. And here's like a big example of like, how do you integrate this in a way that heals it inside of yourself first? And it's not an easy lesson, for lack of a better word. It's not an easy thing to move through, because this all represents stuff that we don't want to look at about ourselves. And that's hard to keep in mind, because the suffering is so visceral outside of us. I don't know a good way of talking about this without making it sound like I'm not a psychopath. So maybe I should just cut my shit out. I don't know.
No, I think it's okay. Like we're just trying to express something that's very difficult to express.
Yeah.
And it's okay if we don't do it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wasn't saying that I think you're not doing it. I'm saying it to
You're
myself.
so sweet. No, I appreciate you saying it. It's lovely. Thank you.
It's really, really those blocks that we have put on ourselves, those veils that we put over ourselves of separateness. Like they're really, they're really firmly in there for a reason. Otherwise, it would be too
easy.
Too easy to. We would just boop right out of the we just boop right out of the stratosphere right away. But
yeah,
it's just it brings me so much more inner peace to be able to move away from that in my own life. And I think I want us to have a whole episode where we talk about like other incarnations and past incarnations, because that for me was such an important journey of like seeing myself as the villain in quotes, and like coming to terms with parts of myself and my soul that I held so much judgment for, so much judgment that I could only ever see them externally and never, ever, ever see the seeds of them that I held inside myself. It's so healing to be able to do that and to find love and compassion for those parts of the self. And I know that there's like such a fear that is the wrong thing, and then that's going to end up resulting in like allowing yourself to be trampled over if you have compassion for somebody who's trying to harm you. But it's all about having just as much compassion for yourself. And then you have like the boundaries. And I mean, if you don't ultimately, if you're not already in the process of like proving to yourself again and again that your inner reality creates your outer reality, then none of this is going to ring remotely true. And that's fine. It'll just sound like total BS. I'm going on like year 3 of this now, of just consistently proving it to myself over and over again, to the point where like I wouldn't even use belief for it's just like, for me, it's just true. It's just how the world works.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
that was an interesting thing I was trying to grapple with this week when I was feeling so calm. And I was fighting that anxiety a little bit, trying to get in. And I was like, is this me not knowing how to be okay while others are not okay? Oh, wait, did I say that right? Is this me not knowing how to be okay in the midst of being around other people who are not okay? And is this also me sort of grappling with how much joy and ease I can let in the midst of stuff that's not actually going well outside of me, and testing my boundaries of like, because I kept thinking while I was calm in all of this whole week, and I was just like waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I kept reminding myself, like trying to be the observer, like the shoe does not have to drop. Like that is the old story. You can let go of that old story because you know somewhere inside of you that you can just live a life of constant ease and joy. It does not sound possible to my old brain, because those are the old stories of like, you can have a little joy and then the other shoe drops, you get hit by a bus, whatever the fuck. And that doesn't have to be true. And I was like, fuck, am I not able to, is this a test and I'm not able to do it? And I went through the whole thing. It's not a test. It's just, if you look at it as a test, it is, but whatever. So I'm like, okay, just let myself, I was like, okay. So I just sat there and I was like, let your body feel okay. And let it play out the story of maybe the other shoe will drop. Okay, fine. But at least you're letting in more of that frequency. So it will just get easier and easier to accept more and more of that. And you don't have to be perfect at it from day motherfucking 1. So, okay, great. You have a calm, easy, quote unquote, easy week. And maybe you let in the anxiety. Okay, that's fine. You're not a piece of shit. You're not failing, just let it ride as it needs to ride. And it's going to be faster or slower depending on how you integrate stuff. And it's not a fucking race, which is what I had to keep reminding myself. I'm like, well, I'm not good enough if I'm not just immediately perfect. And you're like, no, dude, the human experience is for me anyway, is meant to be a gradual ride this wave, let in these frequencies, let it gradually permeate throughout your body. And then you are eventually on that timeline that you want to be experiencing. But it doesn't mean you're not calling in constantly new timelines and new things. And, so you just kind of ride the wave knowing that you're never going to be perfect, because it's not a thing. You're here to experience and play with letting in different integrations of lessons, and you can do that in an easy and joyful way, and that's okay. And if it's not easy and joyful, that's also okay, but don't beat yourself up either way. You're always doing it correctly. That's what I have to keep reminding myself. You're always doing it correctly. I don't know. That was a tough one, because I was like,
Yes.
I need to be anxious. And I was like, why do I fucking need to be anxious? I knew I didn't need to be, but I was telling myself I should be.
Yeah.
And knowing all the while that was an old story that I really told myself I had let go of. Compassion for yourself.
Yeah. Compassion for yourself, and, working up to things. Like, I actually find for me, world leaders are easier. People who are that distant, even if they're posing a huge, huge threat, are easier for me than like people who are like closer in my life, who are like, I don't think that's uncommon.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no, this process is never about like forcing things. Like, you can't if you're not in a space where a person, whether it's a world leader or somebody else, where you're at that place where you're able to feel compassion for them or see that part of your frequency that connects with their frequency of what they're putting out, then like you can't force it. And there's no need to like beat yourself up.
It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a part of this human experience. And that is accepting that without judgment, I think, is the hard part for a lot of people, including me.
And there's also, I think, a lot of different paths that people need to take for their own like soul journeys. There are some people my soul journey is about deprogramming from myself from only constantly seeing the harm that I and other human beings cause. But other people could be on a completely different soul path where immediately jumping to the place of like seeing the other in themselves is not helpful. And, or, like they might move towards things and have to go through a lot of things to get there, or not even be on that path at all. And that's like, anyway, that was poorly articulated.
Yeah, I hear you. It wasn't poorly articulated, but I understand, because I think we're both struggling to be like, okay, how do we, it's hard, because you're like, how do you, and oh man, I feel like it keeps coming down to that thing the records were talking about a couple episodes ago, where they were like, don't water down your truth with like people pleasing caveats, which is really hard to do when you're talking about something that's global fucking tragedy. Don't be inhumane with your talking about it. I might cut this out, but I'm just trying to talk out loud for myself at this point, just to be like, say what you need to say from the perspective that you have. And if people are ready to hear it, they'll hear it. If they're not ready to hear it, then they just won't. And it's time to not control other people's experience of how they hear our words, kind of thing. And that is a really hard thing for me to let go of, that control, by not saying things like, and I didn't mean it this way, and of course I have compassion, and all the things. And that's fine. Like, again, I'm trying, this is a good live practice of watching me go through being nice to myself and not judging myself for not getting this lesson perfect in this moment. So maybe I will leave it in. I don't know.
I think we should leave it all in for this one. And just like,
I think you're right.
I think it's good for just even for us to like let the parts
I think
that
you're
we're
right
through just be.
All right. Thanks for saying that. I needed to hear that as validation, because I was like, do I want to leave it in?
Another thing that I would suggest to somebody, if they do resonate with this idea that your internal reality is reflected externally, is don't make anything more powerful than you in your reality. You are the most powerful. So do not make an ideology, a system, a government, a structure, an algorithm, a corporation, or a world leader, or an army, or anything more powerful. Do not do that. It's very helpful. It can be very helpful to do visualizations. If a certain person keeps showing up in your thoughts, provoking fear, anxiety, and a sense of powerlessness or rage, resentment, to visualize yourself getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the size of a galaxy and beyond, while this individual just keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until you just flick them away.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely, those techniques can be very, very helpful.
I like that. I had just listened to someone else doing a similar visualization, but they had done it in they're like, close your eyes, visualize the situation or person, and visualize it inside of you as like visceral and big, and like this person is in your face or whatever the fuck it is. And then close your eyes and then put that person or situation in the palm of your hand and look at how small it is and how it's outside of you and how it does not have power because it's not inside of you, and you're literally larger than it and you can flick it away. Like that was a really cool. I like how you made it into you growing bigger than the size of a galaxy, though. That's even a cooler representation of how powerful you are, because everyone is as powerful as a fucking god because we are God.
Yeah, I'm
beings.
just some little tiny bird in whoever's listening to this is reality there to remind them of how big you are. So yeah, remember that.
For sure. I end all of my shit, like anytime I write something in my Substack, which has only been twice, but still, and it's even on my website. I'm like, if anyone tries to tell you don't forget you're the most powerful thing in your reality. If anyone tries to tell you differently, they're selling something. And that's what I go by.
Yeah. So I'm also now going to talk about how I feel that this relates to the Orion Wars.
Here we go. Let's do
whether or not we've already talked about the Orion Wars on the podcast, and it is whatever, I'm just going to start from scratch. But I think there are like a million different versions of the reality of the story of the Orion Wars, and ultimately just another story that consciousness is telling itself. But the way I learned it was very empowering and comforting, and so that works for me, which is that it was the most polarized period of history, linear time, whatever, in our universe, galaxy, whatever. I don't know my star systems. And it's behind us. I kept hearing when I was tapping into the energy of what's going on, and I was, the worst is behind us. The worst is behind us. These are like echoes, very awful things that have happened on Earth that are absolutely horrific and unfathomably bad are still echoes playing out of how polarized and dark things got during the Orion Wars, and we are healing that. And I especially feel that the frequency that Jessa Reed, Soberish, and her other podcast emits was specifically intended to reach beings who had incarnated on all sides of the spectrum of the Orion Wars. It also, I think, explains why there's been a lot of tensions and like splitting offs and stuff within those groups, and people having really big interpersonal conflicts with each other and such, and getting really triggered. I think that was really intentional, that Jessa was able to her voice was just able to connect with so many different people with different political ideas. And so we're healing that trauma from that right now. And for me, the Orion Wars have always shown up symbolic lexicon as cats versus spiders, and the spiders are really terrifying, and I've always been profoundly arachnophobic. And
can I ask why? I'm curious why it's cats versus spiders. I didn't understand that origination. What?
I think the spiders are like the Lyrans. The Lyrans being...
Wait, the spiders are Lyrans?
No, the cats, sorry.
Okay, I was like, what? Okay, yeah, cool.
Cats
are Lyrans.
Lyrans being this founding race that started colonizing this universe and exploring it and stuff. And I don't know who the spiders are still.
Okay.
But when I tap into the Orion Wars, I get that cat versus. That's just one. I think this is one of very many different things, but I'm very
yeah.
And I think I played both sides, and it's really hard for me to connect with my spider self. The spiders are always trying to connect with me and reconnect and heal. And I'm like, get the fuck away from me. You terrify me. And they're like, don't you see yourself in us? And I'm like, you're the most terrifying thing in the world to me.
Yeah.
But so I had done a lot of work trying to repair my relationship with spiders. I would do a lot of visualizations, imagining myself covered in spiders. I have spider guides. I've had a tarantula come into my mouth, and then I became the tarantula, and it was showing me like stuff about how if you knew how, like, if you knew like the mere sight of a spider on a phone or a magazine, I would fling it across the room, is like the level to which spiders trigger me. Like, for me to do this was so
That's a lot.
intense in like all these meditations. But there was always, as I said, it's like, that's me like covered in spider, whatever. I still was holding myself at a distance. And then finally, my first guide ever was an owl. And my owl guide came to me and wanted to send me a message. And I was like, what's the message? And I saw myself as a little tiny scared mouse on the ground. And this huge, terrifying owl was swooping towards me, down at me. And I was like, oh my God, this owl is going to kill and eat me. And it was like, yeah, that's how it was like, it's going to happen. And that's how that's how the mouse becomes the owl. So let yourself be killed and eaten. And you're going to become, it was like the mouse energy turns into the owl energy.
Whoa.
So I had to go through that. So then I came out of that and I was like, oh, that's what I got to do with spiders. Because when they talk about one part of the Orion Wars, they talk about this planet which had a net around it, an energetic net, so that if beings on that planet died, their souls couldn't leave. They just reincarnated endlessly onto that planet. And I was like, what's a net? Like, it's a web. That's what spiders do, right? It's very spidery. So I had to do a visualization where I imagined a spider like wrapping me up in its thing. And then anyway, even just, and it was like, so then, and then that's become the spider. And like,
Wow.
really, which is, I think, how the Orion Wars finally ended, where like prey on the inside just released all fear of death, transformation, being controlled, and just like, we're like, fine, you're gonna like wrap me up, just like do it and I'll become you, you know. And then when you become the other, that's like the alchemy. You're like alchemy. No longer separate.
Wow.
And so the other no longer has any power over you.
Just want to sit with that for a fucking minute.
I'm writing a children's book about it.
That is so beautiful. I like have no words for how perfect that is. I am immediately going to buy this book.
So as you can tell from how I told the story, it's I haven't absorbed it, right? I'm like, intellectually, yes, emotionally, maybe 20%, energetically, maybe like 10 to 15% of like actually feeling okay with that moment where I did the visualization of being like devoured by a spider so that I could turn into a spider.
It takes more than one time of just being like, okay, we just let it sink into your bones and it'll percolate and get there. And you don't have to push yourself. But it's also frustrating that you can't just be like, okay, am I fucking over it yet? I get that.
And by the way, I don't think the cats were also
pretty shitty.
Yeah, like doing a lot of engaged in like destructive conquering, you know.
Yeah.
And they're also very gentle spiders out there too. You don't want to create this, like, you know, like
us versus them kind of shit.
Yeah. Cats good, spiders bad. But I think a lot. I don't think I'm the only person that holds that cat versus spider internal template of Orion Ward trauma.
It's very interesting. Now I want to know more about spiders because I need to. Sorry, there's a plane. My window's open and I have no idea if you can actually hear any of that or if I'm just being dramatic. It's very loud to me. I'm so fucking sensitive to noises right now. It's kind of overwhelming. Anyway. What was I saying? Oh yeah, spiders. Yeah, I want to know more about motherfucking spiders. This because what you're saying feels super true and like resonant, and yet also I'm like, oh, I need more information because I don't quite have the memories there yet unlocked.
I literally think it's like a specific battle in like a myriad of things that went down. It feels like very specific, like maybe that one planet with the net, you know.
Okay, like, interesting.
My spider guide named Saranac, which means cluster of stars. That name came to me. I looked it up. Okay, is this huge, like the size of a giant building, brown spider that has such a gentle energy and just is always like peering at me.
Oh my God, that's
very,
adorable.
Very gentle, loving, terrifying guy. It's kind of like a snuffleupagus, but like spider.
Oh my God, what a beautiful comparison. Wonderful.
Yeah. And then of course part of the Orion Wars was the Pleiadians, which I'm also very connected to, seeing what was going on, I think, on that planet with the net and being like, well, we'll go and save them, right? Which
Turned out well.
Yeah. And then they got their planet destroyed for trying to interfere in the karma.
Yeah. This is actually pretty fascinating to me because I just unlocked a past life memory having to do with Atlantis, but also going back to Vega. So what I'm channeling right now in this current phase of my life is apparently the Lyrans through the Vegans, through the Zetas, through human, and then obviously hybrid Essassani, whatever the fuck. But like, I know I took a tour through Orion and the Pleiades and whatever. I think I went there as a record keeper. I don't know that I incarnated to do battles and all that stuff. I might have just to experience it, but I just haven't unlocked those memories yet. The only memories I have unlocked are like just me as a record keeper there. And I know right now, just through a synchronicity, and I don't know what the percentage is, but I know that my human DNA is a majority Zeta. It's got to be like, I don't know, some magic number, like 33% or some shit. I don't know. But like, I have that very strong connection to that side of the lineage. And I know that I did take that tour through. So I have the connections in that way. But right now I don't have the past life memories of what I've actually done other than do that record keeping observation, probably incarnating to like advise or, be a record keeper of like, hey, I can advise this council or whoever's calling me in to like give advice, but I don't know what my role was in that. And I don't remember the spiders yet. So I'm really fascinated to learn what my records are about all of that stuff going on.
Yeah. And as we may or may not have talked about on an earlier episode, that dream that I had, that dream that really concretized my sense, like, oh yes, Jessa is very much involved in the Orion Wars, and like a lot of us were connected. Like in that dream, you were this little calico cat represented by the little calico cat that we were like, oh, that makes sense because you're the record keeper, so you're holding the records because you were protecting you. Yeah. Whereas I felt to myself to be more of in a military role. I was like reporting to Jessa in that dream, and others from the Cerberus group were also present and like escaping into other dimensions or realities or something like that. And
so fascinating.
It was very, very, very stressful.
Yeah. But look at me as the record keeper. I'm like, so fascinating. And you're like, stressful. And there you have that, folks. Okay. And now you know what it's like to be friends with me.
And that's also that ties back. And actually, I'm going to remember my other thing that I wanted to tie back to earlier too. Choppy waters, remind me that afterwards. But what you just said about, now I forget, completely blank.
Fascinating.
Oh, right. Fascinating. This is why for me, the term spiritual bypassing I don't find it particularly useful in my understanding of things. I'm not saying it doesn't have any good uses, but the way I look at things, so unless you're having like a one-on-one conversation with somebody and they are ignoring your emotions and telling you, like trying to override what your own truth and your own sense of things, that for me is bypassing. But people like to take everything as people say people's description of their own emotions is spiritual bypassing. And first of all, don't tell anybody else what their understanding of their own spiritual path is, but also you just don't know where that person's coming from and what they're doing here. They might have had zero previous human incarnations and really just be here to like be a little tourist or record keeper or just somebody who's like full of like glee and joy and is having fun, or somebody who's full of destructive and is supposed to wreak a lot of chaos. Like you have no idea. So
I agree.
Yeah. But then people also like to say it's spiritual bypassing when people are saying things publicly. But again, I take issue with that because there are infinite ways of existing in reality. And sometimes the only way to be jarred out of your way of thinking is to hear something that's completely out there and not at all tethered into our current understanding of reality. And so even if it's not, if you hear something that someone's saying publicly that's not helpful for you, you don't know that same thing might not actually jar someone else out. And actually, even though it's completely like
not for you.
Not for you.
Not for you.
It might be useful
Yeah, I keep reminding myself of that when I hear people talk about shit that either is clearly would have triggered me in previous years, and now my perspective is much more like I might have that knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, I don't like this person, but then very quickly I'm just like, it's literally just not for me. That person is here to say something that is for someone else, and that person is not fucking me. So I'm going to leave it. And it's a real refreshing perspective and calm. The peace of that is just like, all right. And it literally just flows off like water. They don't bother me. I don't bother them. Like the energy is clear.
Yeah. I had something else, but it went away. So it probably wasn't supposed to come out. Oh,
Choppy
the
waters?
other thing though, choppy waters, that does. So when you were saying like you felt calm in choppy waters. So when I was talking about the river scrying and why I was angry that I didn't immediately share that, because when I went to the river with the ambulance, it's hearing like the ambulance stop, and I was like, okay, we're gonna kind of like shift our relationship with the pandemic, and then something else or other things are gonna come that are gonna take our attention and be, create a lot of chaos and stuff. That was the day where I saw that huge dead when I say this is the most tiny sliver of land next to a river, like it's like not, and it was like this massive dead fish with this huge like jaws next to a crumpled,
looked prehistoric.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Totally looked prehistoric next to a crumpled Canadian flag. Now that was in December, and I was like, what's going to happen with Canada? Immediately forgot, and like, because I write down so many stupid things in my notes app, so I hadn't looked back at it, and now I'm like, oh my god, the convoy and what you had said. Because we were trying to parse what the fish meant. And you had said, well, fish is very go with the flow. So this makes me wonder if it's going to be about people like refusing to like go with authority, like what authority figures tell them. I have absolutely no take on the convoy to share right now, but that is very much
that's what's happening.
Their idea of what is happening. So it's very
that is fascinating.
And it's like totally disrupting
everything.
Canada is imploding over this right now. So I was like, holy shit. And then the other thing was I looked up that type of fish. We got to post a picture of this fish. I'll share it on the social because it's like with the flag.
It's so
dramatic.
Incredible. Yeah.
Is that it's this fish called the walleye, and it has these special eyes that help it see in murky and especially in choppy waters.
Oh, I forgot about that.
In our text chain back in December, we were saying like, oh, that makes sense. Like going from being in the choppy waters and not being able to like see anything to being like a guide or like a more of like a helping others through the choppy waters kind of role.
Man, that was I forgot all about that. I'm glad you brought that up.
And you just literally just described your experience of it as such. So I was like, yes.
It's so amazing how things just come together. And I used to think of it as frustrating. Like, why don't I know in the moment? And honestly, this is just as fun, like putting it together, looking back on stuff and being like, yep, that is exactly what's happening right now. That was really cool that we got to have that little mystery game and journey. And now here we are. And it's like, yeah, that's why you write down your dreams. People write down weird thoughts, do some journaling, remember those dreams. Just you never know what's going to come up. That'll be like, oh, look at how powerful my dreams are. Look at how powerful my thoughts are. Just write shit down and go back and revisit and see what, that you saw or thought of in the past and how it's here,
Speaking of which, you and your incessant dreams about Biden, I am like riveted to see how this is going to play out with him at some point. Like what's coming? You just keep having these Biden dreams. And I'm like, okay, something is coming.
It's pretty, okay. So I actually figured out, so the dream I had a couple nights ago that unlocked the past memory of me in Atlantis, bringing in my expertise from my lifetimes in Vega, misusing spiritual technology. Okay. Here's the thing. So I was in this dream. I did not want to go to this fucking party. It was like a political party, like a fundraiser. I was like, no, I've done this before. I've given advice. Nobody fucking listens. And this was all very loving. Like it was like a loving fuck you. I don't know how else to describe it because it wasn't it wasn't vicious. It was just like, dudes, I'm fucking done with you. I love you, but I'm done with you. And this woman who was apparently my friend, I didn't know who she was in the dream other than that she was my friend. So I didn't know her in real life, obviously. Anyway, so she came to get me and I was just in jeans and a sloppy t-shirt. I was like, I don't give a fuck. And she was like, you got to come. And I was like, fine. So I went because I liked this woman and I still cared about these council people, politicians, like whatever. And I was like, I love you guys, but like, I'm done, anyway. So I went to this fucking political fundraiser. There were apparently really good cookies called honey something that my old gay man friend that I apparently was friends with in this dream. And we hadn't seen each other in a long time. And he was like, I have made you cookies and they are called honey something. I forgot the last word and they were delicious. But anyway, so I went with this woman and she was like, can you at least put on a better, like a nicer top? And we were trying to find clothes because I don't know why I brought it. Anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I went to this fucking fundraiser and Joe Biden was the main person there. And so I drew a card for what that was, and I'll bring in a minute, but like, so he was the main politician and there were a bunch of other people, mostly men, but there were a lot of women, but the men were the ones doing the talking and felt more important, in that situation. And everything they were doing, like they would talk, how politicians talk where it's like they can't be pinned down as having an official answer on anything. So they just talk like words that don't mean shit. And just, they would go off and off and off. And I don't know what they were saying, but what I would do is come in and be like, so what you're saying is this. And I would literally say one sentence that cut through all the bullshit that was like, here's the thing. And everyone in the room would gasp like, I can't believe she just actually said that. Like she was comfortable saying the truth and like, that kind of vibe to the whole thing. And this went on and on for what felt like hours. And at the end, I was like, okay, so what you've said is this, and this. And so literally this is your solution. And I gave like the most clear cut, like simple, whatever solution they were looking for. I literally gave it to them, knowing full well that this was probably, I was like, I had slight hope that they would listen to me and take it on because it felt the energy in the room was like, oh, maybe they'll listen to me this time. And then Joe Biden was like, yeah, no, like, I'm so glad you said this, but we're going to do, and whenever he like repeated what I had said, he watered it back down to that politician, like, we're not really going to do what you're saying. And again, all of this was very loving. Like none of this felt gross and vicious, but clearly I was just like done with their shit. Like, okay, dudes, like anyway. So I was obviously disappointed. And the whole room could feel my disappointment because it was kind of like a balloon had just deflated. So anyway, that was the end of the dream. And when I did a card poll about it, when I asked what Joe Biden was for, the spiritual technology card came out again from Vega. And so it's like when I do these card polls about my dreams, it almost doesn't matter what the card says. It like just drawing the card downloads the story of the dream into my body. And I'm like, oh, that's what that was. So if you draw that spiritual technology card, it might not mean the same thing for you, but this is what it meant for me. I was like, oh my God, this was Atlantis. And I was advising the council because they wanted to do something with outside technical, spiritual technology of some sort that was clearly going to lead to the disaster. And I was telling them this will lead to a disaster because I am from Vega and I have been there when we did misuse spiritual technology. So here's how not to do it. And they were like, yeah, okay, never mind. And I was like, well, at least I know where I came from at this point. Like a lot more makes sense. And so, yes. And so, yeah. So, and that's the second dream that Joe Biden has been in for me, which clearly he's just representing, important political figures or council member or somebody's in charge. But I did have another dream with him in it that was super not similar, but like one, it was weirdly like, Richard Nixon was in it and Joe Kennedy was in it and fucking the Chinese president and his cabinet or whatever, they were in it. And we were trying to bring two continents together. And I didn't get it at the time, but I'm like, oh, we're at that moment in history where like we blew everything apart. And now we're trying to like not have that same shit go down where we're like collapsing timelines and just making it the new age. And again, I can't quite figure out like the other dream with Joe Biden was pretty funny because I was just so embarrassed at how old he was and I couldn't look at him because I was just so fucking embarrassed that he was insisting on giving this speech. And I was like, why the fuck? Anyway, there was a lot more to it, but but I know that a lot of this is that council type energy where we're trying to repair what we did back at this moment in history, but in Atlantis. We're kind of at that mirror point. So
Yes.
unpack that
Okay.
as you will.
That's so interesting. Joe Biden is very interesting.
And I can't tell if it's like, because part of me thinks it's just a representation of, that kind of figure, but also I'm like, maybe whoever's incarnated into his body, like maybe he's whatever the council member was during the time of Atlantis, maybe they're back in Joe Biden's body or something trying, and I don't know if that's true, but I know that there's multiple interpretations for this where it's like, maybe they're playing out karma in Joe Biden's body. I don't know that he's really doing it.
I love that.
I don't know what is going on in like real life with all of this, but maybe that was their karmic cycle. I don't know. I don't see Joe Biden actually solving any fucking problems. I'm not saying that he's playing out this karmic cycle and gonna do it right this time, because I don't fucking think he is. But I mean, he's at least here at this moment in time where we're ascending, which was what we were trying to do in Atlantis and fucking failed. So I don't know what's going on with that.
Wow. I just want to do a quick run through of certain galactic races.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So always, this is the Galactic Heritage deck is my resource for this.
Same.
Listen, okay. What I'm focusing on is like karmic lessons. Lyran's seems to be, there's like arrogance comes up. There's an arrogance card and
pioneering spirit.
Yes. Pioneering spirit. It's a lot of like exploring, but also colonizing kind of energy.
Yes.
And very like impulsive. I think impulsivity was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Vegans, you've just mentioned that misuse of spiritual technology. Vegans also got so into spirituality that they started severing off from their emotions, and that's what created the Zetas, who were like the gray aliens. So it's like rejecting emotion is also a big one. Orion, delusion of control comes up a lot, and
polarity, deep polarity.
Deep polarity, yeah. Yeah, this like seeds of polarity, deep polarity, like really being enmeshed in polarity.
The Pleiades.
It's only like, Pleiades is interfering from a good, like wanting to save or help but like overbearingly interfering, like codependent stuff.
Yeah.
It's like wanting to give advice or like fix
save
someone's life
from yourself.
Yeah, saving from yourself. That is like big one. And then Sirians, there's a lot of meddling, like the secret society, they were the ones who created the first secret societies. They were trying to like help liberate, but then it turned into like secret societies that did a lot of
card?
Secrecy?
Assistance with, is it?
Oh, yes.
Assistance without interference or something like that.
Yes.
That's a big Sirian card, I think.
Where they did the genetic projects to like trying to create these early human races that were really horrific outcomes. They have a lot. I feel a lot of karmic trauma baggage for that.
And the Sirians are here a lot. I feel like they're really involved with humanity in a lot of ways. And is it out of that karmic load of having interfered so much, and now they're like, okay, let me come in and live these lessons and
I think so.
Live as humans and help them without interfering too much, but learning to assist without interfere, I guess, is what I feel like Sirians are doing.
Yeah, so much of it is meddling.
Yeah.
So much of the lessons we have to learn as humans is to stop meddling.
Yeah.
But
which makes sense because we're unlearning codependency, which is kind of meddly energy.
Not sure if that was helpful to anyone, but I'm just like, we're always bringing up our galactic stuff. And I was like, let's say if we like, but also while I was saying that, it reminded me that 2021 felt very much enmeshed in the lessons of the spider, which for me are lessons of autonomy and sovereignty. Sovereignty is the word I wanted to say, more like personal sovereignty. And what I feel coming in is the lessons of the bee, which are much more about collectivity and like interdependence and stuff like that. So, the spider is a very solitary creature that weaves its reality. And then there's that flip side where it tries to control the other, wrap it up, just literally consume and devour. And on the other side of like being the spider's prey, all these lessons around like personal sovereignty and not like overreaching. But whereas the bee has these beautiful lessons of like sublimating yourself into the collective, losing yourself, all these things. It also has its not darker. I don't like to use that word. Like it's more,
it's shadow side, flip side, whatever,
flip side. And I don't know, I don't feel like I quite know what those are yet. I feel like when I try to think about it, I'm almost I start projecting a little bit too much with my human fears of assimilation and like cooperativity.
Like the Borg.
Yeah. So I start projecting that stuff, but I think we have yet to fully learn what the flip side lessons are of,
that makes sense,
of the bee. And also we have yet to fully enjoy the gifts, although that's culturally specific. There are cultures that are much more collectively oriented.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm rewatching The Witcher and the production company is called Hive Mind. I'm like, okay, here we go. Thank you, synchronicity.
2022, right? Like with collaboration, and we're coming into, it's very interesting to like, it's that paradox thing too, to like go so deep into the lessons of personal sovereignty, and then also equally fine to like completely sublimate yourself to the collective and just like be in trust and just like,
you can still have individuality within a collective. You are an individuated consciousness, I believe is how somebody described it, within a collective. So you don't lose your own identity. You're still yourself. You're just, I don't know. It makes sense to me in a way that I'm not sure I can even describe, other than saying an individuated consciousness in the midst of a collective. And it makes sense to you or not. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not, no judgments either way. It's just like one of those things that took me a minute to actually understand. So I understand if it takes a second to sink in. But what was I going to say? I was going to say that this year, 2022, the reason I keep feeling that I keep doing this with my hands, like one goes above the other and back and forth again, like a fucking pedal. This is very much going to be, and I can see how it's playing out now. Obviously it's just going to be a minute before it plays out the whole year. But so far this year, it's given me more context on what I was trying to say at the beginning of the year, which was like, it's going to feel super peaceful and collaborative in so many ways for people who have done a lot of been through the ringer and helped their nervous system and all that stuff. And I'm not saying the healing is done or whatever, blah, 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 but it's also going to show us extreme polarity so that we can finally really start integrating that. So we're going to have a huge, what is it called? A seesaw of we're feeling very integrated and very collaborative and like healed within ourselves and in society or moments or whatever. And we're also going to have ginormous examples like what we're seeing now of actual deep ass polarity. And what we're working on now is like in integrating the unhealed parts of ourselves internally so that we can help have that reflected externally. But in the meantime, we're going to see really obvious examples of that deep polarity. And we're going to be working on that integration for a while. So it feels joyful to me still, but also I can see that heaviness of the examples of still being in polarity, and you can choose, which timeline you're on. But I think that's why it feels so weird to talk about all the bad shit going on. Because I know that it's here to show us what we don't want anymore. Like it's all the bad stuff that we're seeing is literally showing us how bad we let it get so that we don't do it again. But we have to heal it first. We can't just like sweep it under the rug like we've been doing. So it has to come out in the open, which does not feel good because the wound is very fucking fresh. And I'm going to stop there. So
when I was talking about the paradox of the sovereignty versus like sublimating to the collective, I think it's that the lessons of the sovereignty were so intensely like, do not do things you do not want to do just to please others. Like, do not put everyone else's needs before your own when you don't want to and run yourself ragged. And then the lessons of interdependence and the bee are going to be so different. It's not necessarily a paradox, but it feels like a paradox because it's going to be the lesson of like, you can literally put the needs of the collective before yourself and be completely, totally happy and free and like feel so at peace and just like put it first and then just like float along and be the happiest free little clam in the world,
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting because we have not been in that energy. And that is also that struggle to get out of codependence and get into sovereignty, it contributes to conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, it's natural.
And it feels so foreign to talk about it. Like, how do you maintain your individuality within and still put the collective needs first? Like, how does that make sense? Because when I first started thinking about it, and honestly, a part of me still doesn't feel like it makes sense. I know that it will, and I intellectually get it, but I don't yet feel it in my body in a way that I know that I will probably pretty soon coming up. Like, I feel like it's a very close concept that's about to Gandalf. But yeah, I'm excited for it because it feels like my natural state that I've not had access to for what feels like, I don't know, millennia or something. Like, I don't know. I feel like I have this deep memory of being a part of like a bee, interdependent in the collective, but yet I haven't had that physical experience in any recent lifetime. And by recent, I mean like 20 billion years or something in linear time. Like, I don't know. I'm just making up numbers, but it feels like a very long time. So I know I have that memory of it. And as soon as I feel it again, I'm going to be like, oh, that's right. And oh my God, I feel like I'm home and this is great. Like, I know that it'll feel that way, but it feels still a little foreign concept.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Definitely. Ooh, that reminds me. I'm full of advice and opinions today.
I love it.
When we're reading, so when we respond, it's like we look at something like this and we're like, oh my God, this is like my worst nightmare, nuclear war, World War III. So then I think it's really helpful to then go in internally and find those places where you still really crave a lot of conflict and drama and high contrast experiences in your day-to-day life, and like reflect on ways that you can channel that into outlets so that we're not like, this is what I'm doing myself, it's like, and things like, for me, it's a lot of creative stuff, like put it in my writing, my art, whatever, but sports, physical activity is great too. Consensual sex is a great place to work out a lot of
totally
cravings for like destructiveness. And there's so many places that we can put that energy in our life where we can reduce our need to call it in.
Yeah.
The form of without shitting on ourselves for when we do call it in, because we're going to be calling it in for a while still as we work it out of our systems. But I think it's like a good time to start is now.
Agreed. So join the Patreon and do Crafternoons with Kay.
You're going to be dark as shit. Oh man, it's going to be a horror fest. I've been listening to it's this podcast. They call it a cozy podcast about horror movies. It's this guy, Paul Rust. He wrote a TV show. He's kind of like a comedy writer, I guess. Okay. And anyway, and another guy, but I find it hits the spot. And like, they actually talked about a movie that was like, which I won't get into now, but it was like one of my most had huge triggering impacts on my life. And they like did a 2-part episode on it. And it was very interesting to like listen to it from that perspective and go back into that energy that tapped into so much of my own personal horror core, but from this very like, they're very silly. They're both very silly and like very geeky. And anyway,
that sounds perfect. I'm going to listen to this.
It's called With Gorley and Rust.
With Gorley and wait, I feel like I've heard of that.
I think it's pretty well. They're both like, I think it's like a pretty well-known podcast.
Okay.
It's very soothing. It's very silly.
But
yeah, it's all horror movies.
That's awesome. I actually, a couple of years ago, decided, oh my God, was that the year of the Dark Night of the Soul? I think it was 2016 when I was like, I think I want to start watching horror movies just to like get myself used to that stuff, because I'd never enjoyed horror movies. And I was like, I want to like safely and gently and nicely push my boundaries, but I still want to push my boundaries of like, I know there's good horror movies. And so I every Halloween just started watching shit. Literally
did the exact same thing around the exact same time. I was like, I have to get past this. Horror movies like just terrified me. And I was like, I have to get past this. I didn't do it super gently. I pushed myself too far.
Oh no.
Like I watched some French extremist stuff. Do not recommend.
Jesus, Kay.
But like and especially around Halloween, it was like became the new tradition, and it worked. Like it did what I wanted it to do.
Same, motherfucking same. And I even found so many good like movies that I was like, how did I not actually let myself watch this? Like Jennifer's Body, fucking love that movie. I mean, I wish they'd, done a little bit more of if it had been a woman screenwriter and they had that female friendship a little bit more towards it. But overall, that movie is one of my favorite horror movies because it was enjoyable as fuck.
You watched Teeth?
I don't think I've heard of that.
Oh,
wait, I've heard of it and I don't think I was able to watch it.
It's a vagina dentata movie, but highly recommend.
Have I heard of that? I think someone told me about it and I was like, okay, I need to, and then maybe I couldn't find it or something, but I have not watched it.
It was kind of low budget or something. Okay. I think it was not like so widely available.
It sounds amazing. It sounds, well, and that's part of the reason I watched Midnight Mass over Halloween last year, because I knew the director at that point, because I'd watched some of his horror movies and I was like, I will watch anything that I still haven't watched Gerald's Game or whatever the fuck it's called, but that's the reason I watched Midnight Mass and enjoyed the fuck out of it. It was so good.
Okay, so Jennifer's Body, what's your favorite horror movies? Let's get into this quickly right now as a final idea.
Damn it. What have I even seen? So when I say I push myself a little easily and gently, I started by watching like Christopher Lee movies from the 70s, so they weren't as scary because they were from the 70s and it's a little bit gentler. I can't remember any of the titles, but I watched I love Christopher Lee. Like I cannot stress enough how much I love Christopher Lee. Okay. Yeah. Jennifer's Body, Tucker and Dale Conquer Evil or something like that. I can't remember. That was really funny. I liked that one. I actually enjoyed all the Scream movies even, but I had seen those in high school because my friends had made me watch them. And I was like, that's actually what made me ease into even wanting to do that in 2016 to start myself on it. I was like, well, I did see the Scream series when I was in high school and I enjoyed those. So I knew they could be funny. Oh, the one where, again, I think it's Mike Flanagan, where the woman is deaf and Hush. That's the one. Oh my God, that's so fucking good. Oh my God. And I loved Midnight Mass. I know that's not a movie, but like that was fucking delicious. Holy shit. Maybe start naming some because I can't remember.
The Innkeepers? Do you know Ty West?
No, I'm writing this down though.
The Innkeepers. I love The Innkeepers. I love the mood and the tone of it. It's so unique.
Got it written down.
And I'm actually a really big fan of the first few in the Paranormal Activity series.
I don't know that I've seen any of those yet.
I stumbled across that. Like I paid for a different movie and ended up going into that. And I really, really just liked that series, the first few. And then it started to get, like the first 2 or 3 I found. So I just really enjoyed them.
I think I've seen at least one George Romero film and I do enjoy those just for like
28 Days Later.
I think I only watched half of it and I forget why I was interrupted, but I never finished it. But that one, I was like, ooh, I need to go back and rewatch.
That one has so much sadness too.
Maybe that's why I didn't finish it because I was sad. I can't remember. There was something about it where I was like,
so much sadness. I think it's one of the best zombie movies there is, but it's like
it's very heavy.
It's very emotionally heavy. Shaun of the Dead, I love.
Oh my God. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that is one of my absolute favorite. It is so good. And I think that's why I'm able to watch horror movies now, because I can be discerning in the fact that they can be fucking hilarious. They can be disgusting as fuck and still hilarious and well done. Like there's a beauty to those films that you just don't always see. And it's because they can be completely into the gore and the underworldness of life and just like, this is darkness, guys, and they can bring humor to it, and not in a way that, well, sometimes it feels cruel humor, but I don't watch those. I watch the ones that are genuinely just like, well, this is fun. If there's a good script, I'm gonna fucking watch it. Yeah, fucking Simon Pegg. Yeah, I'll watch anything that he makes. So fucking good.
I think you'll like The Innkeepers.
Okay, I definitely wrote it down. I'll watch it.
It's so different. I don't know if you'll like the Paranormal. That one's like it's like the handheld camera approach. Like some people really hate that. And
that's hard for me.
I love it. Like I really like the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah. I have trouble with that one. I try, and every time I try, I'm like, why did I do this to myself again? Because I want to give everything a chance. I'm like, well, just because it doesn't work for me doesn't mean it's not a good story. So maybe I could hide my eyes or, whatever. And it's still just like, I can't quite get there.
Don't watch the Paranormal Activities.
Okay.
The Innkeepers.
That's funny that we did that. I can't believe we did that. Of course I believe it. Like, Of course we did that at the same time for the same reason. And of course you went shot yourself out of a cannon, and I was more like, okay, here, little 70s horror movie with Christopher Lee.
Oh, I watched so many things that I regret.
Okay. I mean, I'm not surprised.
Brain scrub.
Oh my God. What a fun experiment life is if you like me need to sort of unclench your ass about things and not be so uptight. Oh man, once you learn how to kind of go with the flow on that and look at things as far as this is all actually fun and for you, and it's literally explore the goods and the bads and not judge them as good or bad. Oh, it's fucking fun. And as I come out of a day of throwing a whole ass tantrum. But that again is part of enjoy that tantrum. You know, I was in it and I was like, this fucking sucks. And I'm going to wallow in it. And I came out of it and it's fine. But yeah.
The tantrum I threw last night, similarly.
Yeah. I love that I can now accept this as part of a full human life. I just had so much judgment, so much uptightness about it. And I'm relaxing into it and it feels really good. In fact, I am even going to go get myself a fancy cookie from downtown. I'm trying to do that whole the gluten and sugar and all the things, like trying to be good to my body. And I'm like, no, it's time for a cookie. And I'm going to have one and not feel bad about it.
Delicious cookie.
These cookies are so fucking good. I cannot.
Have a tantrum reward cookie.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to find a good goodbye tag and I never can. So I'm just like,
My tag for my other podcast, I used to say, so long, chumps.
And on that note,
it was rude.
I love it. Actually, it's pretty funny. We love you, but so long, chumps.